China returns to the center of the Iranian crisis with reports of missile and defense system transfers to Tehran this Monday, May 11, 2026. The suspicion comes along with United States sanctions against Chinese companies accused of supporting the Iranian military sector and warnings about arms purchases by Tehran, and from a direct dispute between Washington and Beijing before the meeting between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. The accusation is simple and serious. While Iran tries to recover from the attacks suffered in the recent war with Israel and the United States, Beijing appears as a possible source of military reinforcement, sensitive technology, and economic support to keep the Iranian dictatorship afloat. I'll tell you all about that in a moment, but right now you'll want to be subscribed to the channel to stay well informed with real-time information at the highest journalistic quality ever seen, with credibility you can trust. Milson Alves. The main point is that Iran would be seeking from China what it lost in the war: air defense, response capability, and the strength for a new round of confrontation. Reports published abroad indicated that Chinese defense systems arrived in Iran after the ceasefire with Israel, in a deal backed by Iranian oil. The Chinese embassy in Israel denied the transfer. The danger lies in what comes next. If Iran is really receiving missiles or defense systems, the consequence is not just a box arriving in Iran. The consequence is that the Iranian regime gains the courage to resist more, deny concessions, reject American pressure, and prepare the ground to confront Israel and the United States in a new phase. The move happens because Iran came out of the war with important parts of its military structure damaged. Israel sought to gain air superiority over sensitive areas of Iranian territory. Meanwhile, the United States increased pressure against the nuclear program and against Tehran's external military procurement networks. This is where China comes in. Beijing doesn't need to announce full support for Iran. It's enough to allow oil trade, dual-use technology, components, and potential defensive support to give the regime a lifeline. China acts quietly, but the effect is profound. Washington noticed this and responded with sanctions. The United States Department of the Treasury targeted companies and individuals accused of helping Iran purchase materials linked to the military sector. Reuters also reported that a few days before Trump's visit to Beijing, the United States sanctioned companies in China and Hong Kong accused of facilitating Iranian efforts to purchase weapons and materials used in ballistic missiles. Beijing responded by accusing Washington of abuse and promising to protect its companies. What they were doing was a behind-the-scenes maneuver. Iran is trying to rebuild its military capability. China is trying to preserve its influence without engaging in direct war. And the United States is trying to cut off the network before it becomes an open weapons pipeline. Trump is trying to prevent China from turning the Iranian war into another test against the strength of the United States. Trump is trying to block China, which has an economic interest. It is a major buyer of Iranian oil, and according to Reuters, more than 80% of the oil shipped by Iran is destined for China. This oil supports Tehran, helps to circumvent sanctions, and maintains a channel of dependence between the two regimes. The missile negotiations between Iran and China had also been under observation before. In February 2026, Reuters reported that Iran was close to reaching a deal to buy Chinese anti-ship missiles in accelerated negotiations after the war between Israel and Iran. February. To reach a deal to buy Chinese anti-ship missiles in accelerated negotiations after the war between Israel and Iran. The Chinese said they had no knowledge of the negotiations, but the report showed that Iranian officials and security sources saw the purchase as part of a larger military rapprochement. That's the sensitive point. China may deny direct delivery, but the overall reporting shows a dangerous rapprochement. It's not just about missiles. It's oil, banks, intermediary companies, satellites, components, air defense, trade routes, and diplomatic protection. It's a network. And when a network like this forms around Iran, the Ayatollah's regime gains time to survive and to put pressure on the region again. The next step is likely to be even greater pressure from the United States on Beijing. Trump arrives at the meeting with Xi Jinping, with Iran as the central topic. Washington wants China to help open maritime routes, reduce economic support to Iran, and stop tolerating companies accused of fueling the Iranian military machine. Beijing, on the other hand, does not want to appear subordinate to the United States. China presents itself as a defender of peace, but protects its interests, its cheap oil, and its stance against the American presence in the Middle East. Israel watches everything closely because it understands that the rebuilding of Iranian defenses could change the calculus of a future operation. If Tehran regains some of the lost protection, any future attack becomes riskier. If Iran receives more advanced technology, time starts to work against Israel. History shows that the military relationship between China and Iran goes back a long way. In the 1980s, during the Iran-Iraq War, China became an important source of weapons for Tehran, at a time when Iran was isolated and looking for any way to maintain its combat capability. Strategic studies on the China-Iran relationship indicate that Beijing supplied conventional weapons and military technology to the Iranian regime during that period, including missiles that increased tensions in the Gulf. When Iran finds itself cornered, it looks for suppliers outside the Western Bloc. When China sees an opportunity to wear down the United States without sending soldiers, it uses trade, technology, and weaponry as instruments of power. Other nations have already used the same logic of indirect support. Russia has sustained itself with bots, drones, and external support to maintain its war against Ukraine. North Korea has become a military partner of Moscow in a conflict that has already gone beyond Ukrainian territory as a symbol of global rivalry. Pakistan has historically received Chinese support to balance India. Saudi Arabia has also sought Chinese missiles in the past so as not to be totally dependent on Washington. The difference now is that Iran is no longer just an ally of Beijing. It is at the center of an open crisis with Israel and the United States, with regional militias, oil, maritime routes, and a nuclear program all on the table. The prevailing thesis is clear. China doesn't need to declare war to interfere in the war. It can transfer technology, officially deny it, buy Iranian oil, protect accused companies, criticize American sanctions, and let Tehran breathe. Iran, in turn, uses every loophole to rebuild its defense, toughen its rhetoric, and buy time. And this is where the situation becomes urgent. If the reports about Chinese missiles are confirmed, the Iranian regime will not just be defending itself. It will be preparing to resist new American and Israeli pressure. The response now must come on three fronts: tougher sanctions against intermediary companies, surveillance of oil routes, and direct pressure from Trump on Xi Jinping. Washington knows that attacking only Tehran is not enough if the economic and technological support is in Beijing. Israel knows that destroying Iranian targets once does not end the threat if the regime can rebuild its layers of protection. And the Arab world understands that an Iran rearmed from abroad while denying it at home can drag the region into even greater tension. China denies it. Iran does not admit it, but the sanctions, the reports, and the diplomatic moves show that the crisis has already gone beyond mere suspicion. What's at stake is the attempt to prevent Beijing from turning Iran into a military asset against the United States, against Israel, and against the stability of the Middle East. If Trump pressures Xi and cuts off this route, Tehran loses momentum. If Beijing continues to make room for the Iranian regime, the next crisis may begin not only in Tehran, but in the shadows of an alliance that prefers to deny it in public and operate in silence. Milson Alves, international relations analyst, and my purpose is to keep you well informed with the truth every day. The news links are in the video description. Leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and at the end, check out the comments so you can be even more engaged with the Milson Alves community.